Hi, I'm a higher ed CMO, and I have a confession to make. The marketing maturity model that I'm using to transform the marketing operations at Miami University, well, I borrowed that idea from someone, and we're going to talk to her today. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, the podcast designed for higher education marketers. I'm your host, Jaime Hunt, and I am so excited to have this opportunity to share insights and inspiration. With Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, I'm designing a different kind of podcasting experience. With each episode, I'll be bringing in a guest for a deep dive into the challenges and joys we all face in higher education marketing. After each episode, you can join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag HigherEdCMO. I would love to see this become like a book club, but for a podcast. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at JamieHuntIMC, that's JamieHuntIMC, for more opportunities to connect. I am so excited to be here with Jaime Ceman, an old friend of mine and the Vice President for Strategic Marketing and Communications at Chapman University. Welcome, Jaime.
Thank you. And I'm sure by old, you mean we've just known each other a long time.
Yes. I mean, we've known each other for like 15 years, but we were 4. So that fits with our whole we're 29 years old thing.
Exactly.
So, Jaime, tell us a little bit about your higher ed journey.
Sure. I mean, I got into higher ed, I think, like a lot of people by accident. I don't know how many people, grow up thinking I'm going to work in higher ed, but I worked in corporate marketing for most of my career until a job opened up at my alma mater. I was doing corporate retail, e-commerce, just as the recession was hitting, and so that was, the most stressful time of my life. I had the nightly dreams of, being in high school and can't get in my locker to get to my exam, and realized I was in need of a different move, and so serendipity had it. A place opened up at the University of Wisconsin that I went to, and I started out as a web marketing manager, which you will remember because that's when you and I first met. And I have been in higher ed ever since. I found my home there and will never look back.
That's awesome. It's so funny the people I talk to, how many people just sort of fell into higher ed marketing, didn't necessarily set out for that to be their career and ended up loving it and not wanting to do something different.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's absolutely me. Once you get into sort of a mission-based organization, I think you realize that, what you were doing before just didn't seem to have the same meaning. But then higher ed is just a special place in general, just especially when you walk around campus and you get to, have meetings about homecoming and, things that you didn't think you'd ever get to experience again. Now you have really in-depth meetings about them. So it's just a fun place to be.
Well, and you're at Chapman University now. How long have you been there?
I've been here just over 4 years. I came out here in 2018, made the long move from the Midwest to Southern California, and have to say the weather's a lot better.
What a hardship.
I know, it's tough, but someone has to do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And tell us a little bit about your department at Chapman.
Yeah, it's a really, I came from, a smaller of the Wisconsin campuses, as you know, and I came out to Chapman, and one of the appealing parts about it was the marketing department itself was a really healthy sized department, fully staffed. We were 40 when I got here. I've cut back a little bit, so fully staffed. We're at about 35 full-time people. We have a pretty good healthy marketing budget, and we have been able to really sort of transform how we function, and we have focus areas in creative services, communications, and marketing. And the marketing side of it, we're really starting to move much more into digital journey building, all of this super fun, advanced marketing stuff that I've always wanted to have the resources to do, and now we're doing it.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you that you've landed somewhere that you can kind of put your stamp on it and actually have budget to do that. It makes such a difference.
It changes things.
It totally does. So one of the things that we're going to talk about in this episode is your marketing maturity model and the efforts that you're making to mature your office into a high-performing marketing model. And that's something that I have shamelessly stolen from you and am implementing at Miami University in Ohio. And so I'm excited about this conversation. But from your perspective, how would you define marketing maturity?
I think the easiest way to talk about it is, how strategic and coordinated are your marketing efforts? I think that it's really easy in higher education to just have a fragmented, lack of strategy in a lot of cases. Organizations, higher ed organizations are just really complex, and there's a lot of different silos within higher education. And to be able to market in a really cohesive way that really choreographs an experience for audiences is really difficult. And so measuring the maturity of an organization to me is how effective are you being at having a really strategic and choreographed experience that meets organizational goals, but provides an experience for audiences that's relevant and engaging.
So why do you think that is important for higher ed marketers to think about?
Again, it's really easy to not move the organization forward, I think, because it's such a complex organization. But I mean, as we all know, higher education is increasingly more competitive, and we've been a little bit slower, I think, to adopt what is some foundational marketing tactics and strategies. And if we don't start to gain traction, I think you're going to see who excels and who doesn't based on how mature their marketing organization truly is.
So with your marketing maturity model, can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like? I've seen you have, and I've adapted a model of this, a chart that kind of shows progressing from a transactional model to a high-performing model. But can you talk through what is included in that?
Sure. It's essentially a graph that across the side, down the side is what I consider the key areas that we're focused on. So in my maturity model, it's brand management, integrated audience journey, insights infrastructure, strategic alignment, risk management, and then department cohesion. So that's, down the side, and then across the bottom is what I would consider sort of the measures of maturity. So when I first got here, for example, I considered our operation very transactional. So to me, that meant that in each of those categories, we were really sort of in our infancy of being strategic. So, we were essentially putting out fires. I have a little graphic of a little fire extinguisher because we weren't able to. That's
probably familiar to our listeners.
For sure. And so, when you're playing whack-a-mole and you're just fixing the things that are being brought to you, you can't be strategic. And so as you progress, and I always wanted this to be sort of a 5-year plan, and now I'm just taking 2 years out for COVID. So I feel like we're in year 3 of moving forward from what I consider transactional to progressing to sort of middle of the road, which is where I feel like we are today, which is competent and consistent. My hope is that we move into the column called accelerating, and then finally get to a point where I consider us what I would call a high performance team, where we're really doing really solid strategic work. The creative is memorable, it's relevant, the experience is timely, and we're meeting our audiences where they are. It's really a choreographed experience. We're building our brand at a national level, and that we're really building momentum, and all of that is informed by really solid and relevant and timely data.
From my perspective, I started at Miami a little less than 2 years ago, so we're a little behind you in that journey. One of the things that I'm using the marketing maturity model for is to help my team see that there's a vision for what we could be, and sort of show them this is what we're working toward, and understanding that we can't really jump from transactional all the way to high performing in 6 months. Like, there's a lot of investment that needs to be made in infrastructure, and needs to be made in expertise on the team. Are you using yours in that way with your team? Like, are they embedded in the marketing maturity model on a daily basis? Or are they thinking about it in that way?
Yeah, you're exactly right. That was part of the intent that I I'll say I shamelessly stole this concept from Indiana University. in full transparency. And really it was the exact tool I needed at the moment when I saw it, because I had what I considered sort of a twofold issue of making the internal team understand where we're going. And part of it stemmed from this feeling of change fatigue that I was feeling from the department. When I got here, we were making a lot of changes and we were building out process, implementing technology. Like, we were doing a lot when I first got here. And I kept getting this sense from people that they're waiting for the changes to end. And I needed them to understand that we're a long way away from that. And so they needed to see where we were going. And like you said, I wanted them to get excited about it and I wanted them to feel invested in it. At the same time, the campus community, during my honeymoon period was super excited about the changes we were making. They're very tolerant of the fact that we were going through change. But at some point, they got a little impatient about when they were going to start to see the results. And so I needed the deans and senior leadership and our campus partners to also understand that this is a pretty lengthy journey that is going to take it's a multi-year journey that we all had to go through. And I needed them to also see and get engaged and excited about where we were going. But I also needed them to see themselves in it too, especially when there's decentralized people across campus who are doing this kind of work as well. They needed to see that at some point they're going to be plugging into a bigger strategy. They needed to see themselves in it as well. So it became a really effective tool for campus and for the department to see where we were going.
Hey all, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO. I want to take just a quick moment to thank my friends at Nectar who made this new Enrollify podcast possible. Nectar brings affordable communications infrastructure to college campuses. It's like Slack, but for the higher ed student experience. Nectar integrates seamlessly with all major LMSs, making it easy for instructors and administrators to build emergent learning communities in all of their classes and groups without the extra work. Their focus is on boosting student engagement and reducing instructor stress by building a learning community in every classroom. By leveraging familiar technology like instant messaging channels, Nectar prepares students for the remote yet collaborative work environment of the future. You can learn more about their platform by heading on over to Nectar. That's nectir.io, and be sure to tell the team that Jaime sent you their way. I think there's so much to be said for making sure that the campus is seeing these almost like a benchmark of where we are today. Like I'm trying to do a twice a year update to our board that's like, this is where we are, this is where we're starting to move across the model, and share that with our deans and stuff too, because I think you're right. People think the progress is so incremental that they think it's maybe not happening, or like, if she's so great, why isn't this all solved already?
Right.
And it's very time and resource intensive to really have a mature marketing organization, and the board and your leadership needs to be willing to make those investments. Has your campus been open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody's on board with where we're trying to go. Like I said, I think there is certainly an impatience, especially because we're in now year 4 of this pretty dramatic change. People still want and see what great marketing could be, and if they get something from us they consider sort of mediocre marketing. They're why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting that? I want more. And so to still be able to anchor back and say, well, here's where we are. Change takes time. Here's what we're implementing. And a lot of it's internal skill set growth, but it's also just the time and resources it takes to build out technology. We're rolling out a marketing platform that really takes a long time, sits on top of a CRM. The CRM has to go in first. People are impatient about the marketing component of it. Those things take time. So we have to get the technology in place, and then we have to learn how to use it, and then we eventually are going to get to really cool marketing. That all by itself is a multi-year plan. So, it's people just get impatient, and on one hand, it can feel frustrating, especially for the department to feel that pressure. But I look at it really positively as like, we've really raised the bar and the level of work that we're providing. So, kudos to us that they can't wait for us to keep doing more, because they know we're capable of it and they want to see great things too.
Yeah, that's awesome. For your team, do you have goal setting that you do around the marketing maturity model, or how do you keep the team sort of focused on those end goals?
Yeah, I think that's really probably the most critical part of it is at the beginning it felt sort of surface level, and it was just sort of an educational tool. And then just as we got more mature over time of even just how to use the maturity model, what we ended up building out, and really the leadership team within my department is hyper focused on this. And what we ended up building out is what we call our roadmap. And so, we literally just built out this massive spreadsheet that became sort of the anchor for all of our work. And every person, every director level or above owned one of these categories. So someone owns brand management, and they own within the spreadsheet creating all the initiatives, or at least overseeing the initiatives and defining of what we're going to do to move to the next column. We literally talk about how we're going to move to the next column, and we build out different initiatives. So at one point we had 63 initiatives spread over the 6 different categories within the maturity model that we built out timelines for. And so then our regular leadership meetings were about, okay, what are we doing? What have we done? Where are we in this? What has to happen to move this forward? So they got hyper focused on moving us forward. And now we're at the point where we're building an input to performance evaluations. We're starting to build languages, new job descriptions come into play that really mirror the way we're talking about the work that we're doing from the maturity standpoint. So everybody really is aligned around this. And I'll say again, we took a little hiatus over COVID because everybody was just heads down, just staying afloat. Now we're getting back into it, so we're going to really take a much deeper look. And now I'm looking at, even just from an organizational structure, when I look at titles and do I move responsibilities around it all, I'm mirroring it back to and literally naming things based on what a high performance team looks like. I'm using that language in job descriptions and titles, so people really start to feel like this is the structure of our team.
So it's really the bedrock of what you do in your department. I think it's really important to have that kind of vision that's really clearly articulated and shows those steps of how you're going to get there. We have 9 measures on our marketing maturity model, and we worked all 9 into people's performance evaluations. I think for next year we might divide them up and have some groups more geared towards moving certain of them forward and other groups moving others forward, because 9 was a lot of goals for every single person in the department to be tracking. But we wanted everybody to feel like they had some ownership in what we're trying to do, and that we needed everybody to move this forward in the way that we wanted to.
Well, and that's the nice thing about it, it's a concept more than this stagnant thing, and so it needs to be organic, and you need to be able to shift it. One thing that I'm really focused on now, and I think it's probably just the natural progression of where I'm at with it, is department cohesion is one of the focus areas, and again, that felt sort of surface level at the beginning. We were doing things to build the team culture and make sure that people were embedded in it, and we talked about we have built a culture committee and to do things to build teamwork. But now I realize that where we are now, that is such a critical component, that department climate and culture is going to be the critical piece that moves us to the next level. And so, we're going through the Great Resignation, and every, person who leaves provides an opportunity for us to look at, well, what do we need now? Because at the beginning I needed builders. I needed people who are really going to help build. We had really no process. I'm not exaggerating. We had almost no process when I got here. So we implemented all kinds of process, overcorrected to a degree. I needed builders at that point. And now that we're, sort of middle of the road and we're moving towards, really the big leap of what will bring us to high performance, now I feel like I need someone who can really help build culture in a way that builds collaboration, because when each director was sort of building their own team and building their own processes and getting the fundamentals in place, that was what we needed then. Now, if we're going to really go to the next level, those teams need to be working together in a really collaborative way. I feel in our culture that we haven't gotten there yet. People are still very focused on, this is my job, this is your job. And if I don't have people who can now develop that sort of critical culture that is going to allow us to move forward, then we're not going to get there. And so it's interesting how any given time, I think the focus areas can either be higher or lower priority, and to be able to be organic in that, I think is super key.
That is absolutely my top priority for the next fiscal year too, is that collaboration and culture piece. And the Great Resignation, we haven't so much lost a lot of people. We've lost a few, but we've had a really hard time filling vacant positions. There's a lot of desire to work fully remote, and most of our positions are not fully remote, and many of them we need them to be on campus and be part of the campus community, and people don't want to. What percentage of your staff is working hybrid right now or fully remote?
We really only have 2 people who are approved to work fully remote, and those are web team. We have work from home, which has been an interesting sort of trial and error. We started doing work from home even before COVID, and that was 1 day a week people could work from home, and it was super effective because people were able to have that day out of the office to kind of be heads down. And we went through the same transition of everybody. It was hard to bring everybody back because now I've proven how effective I can be at home. And we're all talking about sort of the same thing. The culture is so hard to get back when we're not together. And so when we originally came back, we came back with 3 days in the office, 2 days work from home. And then, something silly was, stagger it so that we always had team coverage in the office that day. Well, all that did was create this environment where everybody was still on Zoom all day long because most of their team was at home. And so they're stuck at their desk on Zoom, and it was just super frustrating. So now we've adjusted where everybody's in the office on the same days and work from home on the same days. And now we've got a much better dynamic. And the days that we're in the office is where I'm trying to even change our physical space to create, I have much more brainstorming areas. I'm putting couches and whiteboards and building brainstorming rooms. And now we're trying to figure out from a process standpoint, how do we leverage these spaces? How do we make more of a habit of how we work together differently when we're physically here, so that when we're home we can still do these super effective work from home, but when we're here it's the expectation is very different. And it was funny, even prior to COVID, people were getting to the point of sort of the frustration of open office environment, and it's really noisy and loud in here, and I need private time. And now what I want people to adjust that's what you want, the days that you're in the office. Like these are the days that you're getting to see each other again, and you're socializing, and we're brainstorming, and we're working together, and it should be loud and fun in here on the days when we're together. And then when you're home, those are your work from home days, and that's where you get your quiet time, and you can be super effective and functional. But so just, it's such a different mindset that it'll certainly take time to get there. But I think, I don't know if there's a perfect balance, but we're working towards it.
We're in that same, right now we have only everybody's in the office on Wednesday. Otherwise it's spread out for coverage, and it's 3 days in the office, 2 days at home for most people. And we're having that sort of Zoom fatigue because everybody's sitting in their cubes with their headphones on doing Zoom calls all day. And why am I commuting 45 minutes to do that? And we met today actually to talk about what are some other ways that we can structure this. So it's great to hear from you that the approach of having everybody in the office on the same days is potentially working a little bit better for you. I'll be interested in seeing how that shapes up for you in the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, we'll see. There's certainly pressure to allow for more work from home days. I'm really torn about it because, again, I think there's people, I can see the morale, challenges that people have when they're at home. It's isolating for a lot of people, and when they're together in the office, they just have a different life to them. And so I struggle with what they feel that they want compared to what I feel like they need, which is just much more engagement with each other. We're marketers, we're communicators, theoretically a lot of us, enjoy, human interaction. And so to back away from that so much has, I think, been hard.
What do you think is a good place for a CMO who's interested in following this approach to maturing their organization?
I think that the first point, and you said it too, you have 9 categories, I have 6 categories. Defining how you even structure your marketing program and defining what your categories are that you even want to mature, I think is the first and most important part of it. And then defining the categories of how mature you are is sort of intuitive, and it can certainly be shared. If anybody wanted mine, I'm happy to share it. So I think defining even then what are those incremental steps from transactional all the way up to high performance. What is a reasonable and sort of measurable change between again, assuming it's year over year, which was always my goal, and that might be a little bit of an aggressive goal, but the goal was always what does 1 year to the next look like if you're really progressing, and so defining what that looks like. And for example, brand management, transactional to me, in the transactional phase of brand management, that looked like our brand was uninformed and irrelevant. We didn't really have a brand as compared to high performance team where our brand is memorable and impactful. It's based on personalized journeys for segmented audiences. It's a mature brand that actually looks at the audience level and creates, we talk about sub-branding a lot. We have our institutional brand and then sub-brands because every audience isn't the same, and you need to be able to be flexible within your brand and smart and data informed in your brand to make sure that it's relevant for the right people at the right time. And so understanding what does that look like incrementally over time so that you can bring your team along in a reasonable way. And maybe it's more than 5 categories, maybe it should be 6 or 7 depending on how incremental you move. But again, it's the theory that you're trying to do more than I think literally this is what it looks like, but you need to provide what the continuum looks like for each category of marketing, and then it becomes, I think, the powerful tool you need.
Did you work through shaping yours out with your team, or did you kind of do it and then share it with your team?
I did it and then shared it with my leadership team, and then we worked through it and tweaked it. I'll say, my first shot was, again, I shamelessly stole this from Indiana University. They had a much more elaborate and detailed maturity model that went into much greater detail over a greater amount of time. And so mine took a lot of the concepts but just really streamlined it, and they didn't have a ton of feedback when I first shared it. They thought it was pretty solid to begin with, and then we started having, so what I tend to do is have the leadership team get on board and then have them work with their individual teams. And so that's what they did. They took it to their teams. They got feedback that way. So they had a voice in it. And again, while not a lot of changes, I think they at least had the buy-in that they were able to help inform it. And so I think that was a critical part of it. So anyone who wants to implement this and have it be effective, I think that the teams themselves really need to feel like they were involved in and had a voice in it. And then the buy-in comes, and then the excitement comes, and then the momentum starts.
You mentioned earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you sort of have champions for each of the categories within your area. Am I understanding that right? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, just in my organizational structure, I have a level of assistant vice presidents and then directors for really every functional team. And to me, developing our leadership team was also a critical part of building out the team in general and maturing the organization. So I wanted there to be sort of an intentional ownership at the director level to be able to move initiatives forward. And so 6 directors, conveniently 6 categories. So really I assigned a category to each director, whether it made sense for their role or not. I mean, I tried to make as much sense as we could, but all of this is integrated, so across those teams. So, but I wanted them to have a stake and some ownership in it. And so while they're not accountable for every initiative underneath their category, they were responsible for at least making sure things were moving forward, that these were defined, that there's timelines established, and then they were responsible in every director meeting, which we had monthly, of reporting out on the progress of each of those. So it gave everybody a sense of ownership in it and some accountability in making sure things were moving forward. And I think it was super critical at the time. Now, as I'm sort of evolving and maturing myself, I'm thinking now as I look at just the organizational structure of the department, building this much more into the roles and responsibilities that make more sense based on, so having someone responsible for brand management who is actually overall accountable for brand management. So now building it into job descriptions as compared to sort of a leadership exercise. Now making sure now is, if we're going to continue to get more mature, it needs to be built into the organizational structure more in a solid way. So that's what we're going to do now.
We took a slightly similar approach where we took the 9 categories, and then we happened to have 9 directors, and it was really easy to sort of divvy them up because everybody had ones that they felt were most connected to their work. And so we were able to kind of divide them up that way, and then keep the brand category as across everybody. So that was the one that everybody sort of has a piece of ownership in. And like I said, they all have ownership across of tasks and responsibilities and strategies across all of them. But in terms of like shaping out what are we going to try to accomplish this year, we divided that up among the directors, and it seems to be working pretty well. This isn't really for the faint of heart, though, because it is, to your point earlier, change fatigue is a real thing, and this is sort of saying for the next 5 or 6 years we're going to change. I keep trying to say iterate in order to like get people off of the change word, but have you had any change management issues with this approach?
Yeah, like I said, I think if I were to look back and make changes to how I did this along the way, I would have put much more focus on culture and climate to begin with. I really think that, we lost people along the way, and that we probably could have kept had we, managed the culture a little bit better. And again, there's something to be said for the phase of building that we were in, but there's probably a better way to manage building and building collaboration and climate at the same time. Climate is policies and process and procedure, and how you establish all of that can really make or break culture. And if we're saying culture is important, but that's not what we're rewarding getting this thing done, then the culture becomes about getting those things done and forgetting about the human aspect of it. So that is something I would say anyone who's starting out on any sort of massive organizational change really needs to always keep top of mind is how you're going to feed culture in a positive way. And then I think we could have probably even maybe moved a little bit faster.
Hey all, Zach here from Enrollify. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mickey Baines, Jeremy Tiers, Jamie Hunt, Corynn Myers, Jaime Gleason, and many, many more. You can learn more about the Enrollify Podcast Network at podcasts.enrollify.org. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. Find yours at podcasts.enrollify.org.
I think that's really good advice. And I think I have the same regret because I sort of treated them all equally. And I think that you can't get anywhere if you don't have good culture. And I inherited a team that had been through 5 leaders in the 5 years preceding my arrival, or 4 years, I think, 5 leaders in 4 years before my arrival. And that's a lot on people. And their expectation of what change is change never was good. So there was sort of this, we're going to change, and it's going to make things even worse than it is in a way. Not everybody, but, a subset of people who had been through the cycle of negative changes over and over again. And I think I underestimated the impact of that on the team and the long-term sort of damage that the team had over having such rapid and continual leadership change.
Change for the sake of change is really hard, and I think that happened in my organization as well. And that's where I think change fatigue is a real thing that we need to consider through it all. Not to stop or slow down change, but to at least manage how it's perceived. And that's where the maturity model actually becomes a super powerful tool, because they're not waiting for that magical day that it's going to stop. And I'll say, the day we consider ourselves a high-performance team doesn't stop the process. I mean, I hope we get to a point where I can say we've landed, but I sincerely doubt we're ever going to get there. There's always going to be more to do. The climate's always changing. The tools, the tricks that we use are always changing. So people need to understand and mentally prepare for what it means to be in an organization that's constantly evolving, and that's where change fatigue can be managed, I think, if you can get them excited about the process and where we're going.
So, Jaime, when you look down the road, what is your ultimate vision? I know you just said that there's not really an end, but what does the perfect situation look like to you?
What's so funny, there is this exercise I've done in the past called the painted picture, and you write down what you think and what does it look like when you walk around your office in 3 years, and it's not 10 years, not 15 years, it's 3 years. What does it look like? That's why I think it's a powerful exercise, because it really gets you tangible about what it is you're trying to accomplish. I have this dream that I'm going to walk around the office and there's going to be people sitting in my couch area and they're going to be talking about something really cool that they want to try. I'm going to walk and I'm going to hear all this buzz and noise around, and someone's going to be celebrating the A/B test that they just did. And I have this dream that we're going to just get super excited once we power through some of these really huge milestones, like getting our technology up and running, and we can really just focus on the work. I just feel like we're going to get to a point where everyone just really sees how fun this is, and we get really jazzed about doing cool stuff.
I love that. I love that idea of like the energy that you're describing in the office too. I think that's part of what makes marketing and communications like such a fun place to work. It should be the kind of jobs that we're excited on Sunday nights that we get to go to work tomorrow. And I think that's just a beautiful vision for your team. What challenges do you think exist that might keep you from getting there?
Oh, all of the things like, having
just
the
everything,
all of it. Honestly, it's having the time and the resources. We know there's so much work to be done while we're trying to move these huge boulders up the hill. And so how do you manage the day-to-day workload while we're still trying to move these huge initiatives forward? And it's a real challenge that we all have. I mean, I could double the size of my marketing team and still not meet all of the needs and desires that the campus community has. And even talking with them about whether or not that makes sense or not compared to where we're trying to go strategically is always a challenging topic. And you can never meet expectations. You can, hope to exceed them, but you're lucky if you can keep people happy. So trying to make the most out of our limited resources is always going to be the biggest challenge. And now we have just these monumental changes in higher ed that we're dealing with. The cliff is coming, and all of these huge things that we're trying to tackle. The value of higher education always under pressure. All of these things, while still trying to move these incremental things forward, is always obviously the biggest challenge.
A couple episodes ago, I talked to Jason Ceman about his perspective on why CMOs were getting more of a seat at the table. One of the things that he talked about was that COVID sort of elevated the importance of Marcom in that, like, we had to respond to all of the things that were happening in the world, and communications was wrapped up in that. But that's also sort of a double-edged sword, because we're also dealing with all of these crises while trying to move our brands forward or move our offices forward. Do you have any advice that you would give to CMOs for managing those two realities, that like Marcom, crisis, issues management, reputation management, and continuing to move the forward progress on maturing your operation?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I do agree. I think that I just look at how I spend my own time and how much that's shifted just over the last few years. I spend so much time in issues and crisis management. And, part of the wonderful dynamic that is social media and always being hyper-connected and on all of the digital platforms that keep us connected also has us in the spotlight all the time and just constantly managing the next, reputational risk. So, I guess from my perspective, and I have to remind myself of it too, that, use your team the way you need to use your team. And that's part of why my focus has been so strongly on building out the leadership team within my area. I know that I'm not going to be able to pull back from some of these larger initiatives or these larger issues management, how I spend my time. I need to make sure that the team is moving these initiatives forward and has the ownership and the skill set that they need to be able to be doing these things. So, delegating and building the team to make sure that they're able to continue to move things forward, I think becomes super important. That's why all along I've known that I needed to build a leadership team. Now as I am spread more and more thin, which is great because I'm involved in all kinds of conversations that we should be a part of, it does take my attention away from moving things forward. So I need the team to be able to do that.
I think that's great advice for especially a new CMO coming into an organization to think about filling those leadership positions. I kind of describe it as the football needs to keep moving. I need to be able to hand it to somebody. Well, I go do this other thing over here, deal with this other issue, and I know that the football is still moving down the field in the direction that we have all agreed that the football needs to go. And then I'm not going to come back and say, why are there 3 footballs now? Or where did the football go? Why is the football a soccer ball? Like all of those kinds of things. Just keep it moving, keep it moving.
And I think that's with your sports analogies. That's very nice.
I know, sports ball is in goal units. But I think that's something that the best advice I got when I started at Miami was you need to fill your vacant leadership positions first, because otherwise you are going to be doing your full-time job plus those leadership position full-time jobs, and it's just not going to be possible to get everything done that needs to get done. You're going to be spread too thin.
Yeah, I agree.
Think that's important.
And I'll add on that to say, as you're filling leadership positions, make sure that they are the people that you need to build the culture that you want as well. Because the tone that they set, especially when you're not there, is the tone that becomes that culture. And so you can have someone who can be amazing at their job, but they cannot be who you want defining your culture, I think. And it's a hard thing to interview for, but it becomes super critical in the day-to-day.
One of the things that we say in the team is you can train people on skills, but you can't train character. And so when we do hiring, we're looking for people that are positive people who are going to be contributing to that positive, enthusiastic, energetic culture, and not like people who are going to complain all the time or be pot stirrers or whatever. Because you can't really make somebody be something they're not.
Yeah.
They're either a positive, enthusiastic person or they're not.
Exactly.
So
not everyone can be as cool as a Jaime.
Obviously. I mean, everybody's set back a little bit by not being named Jaime. So Jaime, in terms of the marketing maturity model, do you see an approach like this as being a trend that we're going to see across higher ed? I do know we talk to a lot of people about wanting to mature their organizations, but do you think that a tool like this is the way to go? What do you think about that?
I hope so, and I'll say the fact that I stole it from IU and you stole it from me, and I've seen other organizations kind of pop up with this similar language. I think once you understand the power of the tool itself, I think it becomes super effective in moving, again, not just moving your organization forward, but communicating internally and externally on what it is that you're doing. I hope this becomes a real trend, because to me this has been transformational. For me as a leader, it's been transformational for us as a department and university. So I hope that it does.
I remember when you were so excited to share it with me, like you were just like so jazzed about it.
And I was like,
I know. I'm like, yeah, I need to steal that. Because it is truly, whoever came up with this first was just absolutely a genius, I think, because it just lays everything out so well for the team and sets a direction. So, Jaime, this is my last sort of off-topic question, but if you got a $10 million boost to your budget, where would you invest it? And let's pretend it's recurring dollars.
Okay. Good differentiator, yes. It's ongoing funding. I would probably divide it up between additional staff and additional marketing spend. The staffing area I would boost. I would bring someone in to just get us up and running on these technology platforms that we've been slowly implementing. I'd bring someone in to just train us and get us doing, at least the skill level we need to use them. I'd through that probably understand how many more people I could really build out into the digital area. One area that I would desperately love to just triple the staff in is just building out journeys, to look at every one of our audiences, build out those comm flows, do sophisticated journey building, trying to automate as much of that as we can, and really start to get sophisticated in that area. That's where I know we need to go, and that is the hardest area, I think, to resource. So I would just put so much into that. And then, the other $5 million would be, I'm trying to build a national reputation, so I need to do everything I can to build brand for our organization across the country. We moved from a regional private to a national private about 3 years ago, and so we have to build that reputation so that we can continue to, rankings are something that we have to pay attention to, and we don't have that national name yet, and so building on that would be the other part of the objective.
And that's expensive. Building a national brand is expensive.
Sure is.
This is the first institution I've been at that's been really focused on building a national brand. And when you start to think about what national really means and the breadth and scope of that, it's really, really, really expensive. Yeah. And I'm a Division I school. It's not a Power 5 conference, so we don't have the boost from football. We don't have a medical school to give us that boost. So it's, we're kind of with one hand behind our backs. A lot of national brands have Division I football teams.
Mm-hmm. No, I always say if we could just get a basketball team in the Final Four, that's all it really takes. But that's not going to happen for us being D3, so...
We just talked about this today with our VP of Enrollment Management about what would solve all our problems. A Final Four appearance.
Yep,
Got to do
that's all it takes, really.
I think George Mason or somebody had like an 8,000 or 800% increase in applications after they went to the Final Four. I mean, just mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
The brand lift that you get.
We can just do that. That's what I told my president that too. Like, let's just go D1. Let's get a really good basketball team. That's all I need.
Cheap and easy, right?
Obviously.
So, Jaime, I've enjoyed our conversation, but if anybody else wants to pick your brain on what you're doing at Chapman, where can they find you?
Oh, sure. I'm on LinkedIn. Jaime Ceman, just spelled like that, Jaime Ceman. And my Twitter is SmithJ90. So you can catch me on either of those places. Otherwise, you can look me up at Chapman.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Jaime, and thank you to the listeners. As always, I hope to see you on Twitter with the hashtag HigherEdCMO to continue this conversation. You can also find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Twitter, I am at Jaime Hunt IMC. That's JaimeHunt IMC. And LinkedIn, I am Jaime Hunt. And I hope to hear from you and be back with another episode in 2 weeks.
Hey y'all, Zach here from Enrollify. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO with Jaime Hunt. If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at enrollify.org.